What's up, people? Orseofkorse here, coming at you with another Paragon deck build. Today I'm going to be looking at my girl Morigesh. She's one of my favorite casters right now, one of my favorite characters, period, right now. She's Growth and Corruption, very good combo there. And for her, I go ahead and I start off with the Archmagus. The reason for that is I think power is the best way to go with her. You can build differently because growth does allow for some flexibility, but I think power is key for Morigesh. You want to be able to harass, you want to be able to poke people heavily, and power helps you do that. Makes you a threat on the field, especially since you don't really have an escape. Now, as we get down to the consumables, I have them maxed out pretty much, or filled pretty good here. I start out with the health potion, mana potion, scout ward, pretty basic there. And as I get to about level 8, I'll swap out my health and mana potion for a hunter's drink and a shaman's drink. The strike token here, that's simply in case if I'm floating a point, I need to go back early or whatever. I have that the strike token there so that I can fill in spots if needed, or a spot if needed. So that's it for the consumables pretty much. I'm not going to go into much detail there. Now, what I do want to talk about here is my Assassin's Ward. This is probably one of the more important cards in my deck here. The Assassin's Ward is my dummy ward. This is the card that I usually grab as soon as the game begins. Within that first minute 30, I try to get this down and then port back and get my little starter set there. Now, the reason for this card is it gives you that vision, especially if you're playing mid lane, because Morigesh usually play her left or mid. If you're playing her mid, dummy ward is going to be invaluable, because I get the dummy ward, I put it on the right side, and then I go back and I get my scout's ward along with my mana and health potion, and I put it on the other side. That gives you vision on each side of the jungle lane, so that you don't get ganked. And here's the thing with Morigesh, you don't have an escape, so there's no excuse not to have wards in your deck. If you don't have wards, you're probably going to feed a lot. There are some people who can get away with it, but as you get to the higher elos, or even in silver, you're going to get punished for not having wards. Now, that's all I'm going to say on that. Make sure you have wards in the deck. Next card I have here is the Brawler's Ward. This is my actual ward that I keep all game. Now, depending on the enemy team, you can build this to counter them however you need to. What I mean by that is, if the team isn't ganking, if they're not really playing well, maybe you don't need the ward early on. I usually build it fairly early just because I like to have that vision, not only for myself, but for my team. But it's up to you. Sometimes there have been games where I don't even get to build the ward because I just don't need it. You're just steamrolling this team. It happens sometimes, but that's not going to be the norm. Assume that the team is going to be as good as you, or the team is going to be as good as your team. So play normally, grab a ward. As we get down here, I have two throwaway cards. I go with the Fountain Spike. The Fountain Spike gives you 6 mana, or 6 power, 30 mana, and then another 6 power, 30 mana once you fully upgrade it. I like this card over some of the other options because of the mana. Morigesh late game doesn't really need to build mana. I wouldn't build any mana into her deck really, except this right here. Early game, especially if you're missing out on the river camps for whatever reason, this card will help you keep some mana, help that sustain there. Now, it'll only be 120, but you don't need a whole lot, right? Just go back when you need to and all that good stuff. And what's more important, I go with the power cards here. So I have a major cast or a minor cast here, and then 2 minor strikes, so 6 power apiece. I wouldn't, like I said, I don't build mana. I think power is going to be more effective just because it's going to allow you to hurt that enemy player, whoever you're laning against in the mid or the left lane. And also to help you with last hitting and getting those ganks, especially if you're mid lane, you should be rotating over to the right or left, whatever seems to be, whatever side can give you a pick. I'm not going to look at the second one because they're exactly the same. So 2 Fountain Spikes, and then the first card that I build in my deck proper is going to be the Shadow Scroll, which is a 9-point card here. Now, I like the Shadow Scrolls because they give you power and penetration, 2 things that Morigesh is going to benefit from greatly. So this gives you 6 power, 2 ability pin, and then 4 ability pin once you fully upgrade it. I equip this with 3 strike cards, which are 12 power apiece, gives you a nice boost to damage, and a little bit of penetration helps. Now, I have 2 more Shadow Scrolls, and I'll look at one of them because they're built exactly the same. This is basically just a bigger version of the 9-point one. So this one, instead of having the 12 power cards, they're going to have Major Cast, which gives you 18 power. and of course you get the 6 ability pin once the card is all maxed out. You get 2 once you equipped it, and then 4 once you fully max it out. So once I'm have these 3 shadow scrolls, I will have 18 penetration, which is pretty good. Some people, 20 is probably a little more ideal, but 18 will do you. So I usually build the 9-point shadow scroll first, and then situational for the thick blood. Now I keep this card in the deck because it's good for so many characters, like or for countering characters. Rampage, Chimera, phase, of course, is the big one. Now if the enemy team does have a phase, I would go ahead and equip this after I get my 9-point shadow scroll. The reason I wouldn't equip it first is because she's not going to be doing a whole lot of regen early game, or even Chimera, even Rampage. It's not going to be a big thing early game, but towards about mid game, that regen, especially from characters like Phase, will start to play a role into the game. So Thick Blood will come in handy at that mark. So depending on the enemy comp, I will go ahead and go Shadow Scroll and then Thick Blood. Now once I have Thick Blood, I go ahead and I get another Shadow Scroll, 12 point. And this is the card that I will build next to last. Is going to be a Tainted Magic. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Thick Blood here. So Thick Blood gives you 12 power, 30 mana, and I equipped it with 2 strikes, which are 12 power apiece, and then a minor strike. Now here's the passive that I like. On hit with ability, apply Blight to enemies for 4 seconds. So this is what I was talking about. It does so well against Chimera, Rampage, and Phase. Blight reduces all healing by 40%. So if you have characters like that, this card will make it very hard for them to regen. It will make it very hard for them to just fight through your damage, because you're going to be cutting that healing almost in half. Now let's take a look at Tainted Magic. I build this card fairly late. It's usually the second to last card that I build. You can build it earlier. If you want, you can even build it as your second card, because it is fairly useful, but I usually wait until a little bit later game, just because it's such an expensive card. Now this card gives you 12 power and then 0.3 mana regen. Now this is what I like about it though. Unique passive is Spell Burn. Dealing ability damage to enemy heroes, applies a damage over time effect that deals ability damage equal to 8% of the target's current health over 4 seconds. This effect cannot stack. Consecutive ability damage instances refresh duration. Now I equipped this card with a minor strike and then 2 strikes, which gives me a nice little boost of power. Let's talk about this real quick. The reason that this card is essential on Morigesh is because of the Hive Tainted Magic combo. Now what I mean by this is you throw your Hive and it starts doing tick damage. I don't want to call it a poison, because technically it's not a poison, but it's a dot damage over time. Every time that dot ticks, you get an additional dot, which is the Spell Burn, that also ticks. So let's say your Hive hits for 65 or something. You're going to have an additional tick that hits for like 10 or whatever, based off the person's health. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but that additional tick will keep the person from recalling. It will be just extra damage onto the person, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is, especially on top of the damage of the Hive itself. If Hive is hitting for 80 and then he gets an additional 12 damage, that's 92 damage right there. That's pretty good damage. And try it out on your Morigesh and just see how it works. I've played around with it and it is devastating. Much more effective than Nanoplasm. That didn't really work, but Tainted Magic is a beast on Morigesh. Just make sure that you hit them with your mark first and then hit them with your Hive, because what you don't want to do is hit them with the Hive first, because you want that tick to keep going for as long as it can. So hit them with the mark first and then the Hive. That'll be how you maximize your damage, of course. Now the last card that I will build in here will be the last Shadow Scroll, which is going to be another 12-point card. So people, that's what I have so far for my Morigesh build. Let me know what you think about it. Put your comments down in the comment section, of course. I love to hear your feedback. Also, let me know who is your favorite caster right now. For me, it's definitely Lieutenant Bellica and Morigesh, but let me know who's yours. As always, people, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. share the video out. Somebody else might see it, and it helps me, well, and it might help them, and it also helps me out a bunch. Still no live stream for a while. I should be back around July 10th or 11th. That's when my plane is going. I'm going to catch a plane back home. So a couple of weeks and we'll be back to our regular schedule. So yeah, just wanted to give you guys a little heads up there. As always, people, thank you for watching. This is Orseofkorse. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.